We're making a healthier coconut cream pie with a gluten-free almond flour pie crust. The no-bake filling is naturally sweetened with maple syrup and rich and creamy with coconut milk and cottage cheese. Hello, my name is Nicole Bonilla, and if you love healthier recipes to our favorite foods, then you are in the right place. Now you're welcome to jot down these ingredients as we go along, or you can click on the link that's in the video description below, and that will take you to my website with the full recipe with all the details, including nutrition facts, ingredients and substitutions, and frequently asked questions. Now to make this really easy pie crust, we'll start by mixing together our dry ingredients. And we'll start with 2 cups of almond flour. And then to add some elasticity, we're going to add a 1/3 cup of tapioca flour. And for a little sweetness, I'm adding 3 tablespoons of some cane sugar. And for a little flavor, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then I'm just going to whisk these together until they're well combined. And then we're going to crack in 1 egg and a 1/3 cup of soft room temperature butter and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now it might seem a little unusual to be using soft butter instead of cold butter for a pie crust, but what we're making is essentially more like a cookie dough because this is gluten-free with the almond flour. So I'm just going to take my spatula, kind of mix the egg and the butter together in the center, and then it will slowly start pulling in all the dry ingredients. Now you could also use a mixer, but I think it's just as easy to use the spatula. And then we just mix it until everything's incorporated. And then we're going to take our 9-inch pie plate and I'm just going to spray it with a little bit of coconut oil to make it non-stick. And then we'll drop in our dough, and then I'll just roughly spread this out towards the edges. And then I'm just going to come in with my hands and start by pressing it up the sides of the pie plate and forming a really nice big soft ridge that goes just above the height of the pan. And I'm not concerned with doing any fluting at this point, so we'll do that next. Now this recipe is going to give you a generous amount of dough, so you could do it a little bit thinner if you like to have a thinner crust. But I like my crust nice and chunky, so this is perfect. And once I have a nice thick even layer around the sides, then I'll come in and start flattening out the middle. And the bottom only needs to be about a 1/4 inch thick. Now I can come in and make the flutes, and if your pie pan already has some flutes in it, you can just use those as your guide. So I just kind of place my knuckles right down into the grooves, and then use another finger to press it in between my knuckles. But you can do this however you like. This dough is very forgiving, so you can take your time. Now that I've made it all the way around, I can go through and just kind of smooth out some of the edges that look like they need it. Now, if you could use more healthy inspiration on a regular basis, I invite you to join my email list. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below, and that is the best way for us to stay connected. Now, it's really important that we go around with a fork and make some holes in the bottom of the crust, because this will keep any air from getting trapped underneath the crust. Well, this looks gorgeous, and it's ready to go into a 350-degree oven for anywhere between about 22 to 25 minutes, or until the edges are just turning a nice golden brown. So here's a pie crust that I baked earlier, and then I allowed it to cool completely. You can see how it has just this beautiful golden brown color. So now we can set this aside while we make our filling. Now this coconut cream pie filling is no bake, but we do need to activate the cornstarch into the coconut milk. So we're just going to put our saucepan over medium to low heat, and I love using my hex-clad pots because they are non-stick, stainless steel, and have the benefits of cast iron. And then we're going to pour in 1 can of coconut milk, and this is different than the milk that you buy in the carton. It needs to be the canned milk. And then we'll add 1/4 cup of cornstarch, and then we just want to whisk these together really well. And it will start to thicken on the bottom, which is why I want to keep stirring it as it thickens. So after just a couple of minutes, it's really going to start to thicken. So we're just going to keep stirring. And then as soon as it starts to get those big bubbles, we know it's nice and thick, and we can go ahead and remove it from the heat. And then just to help it cool off quickly, I have a bowl that I had in my fridge. So this bowl is nice and chilled. I'm just going to transfer the filling into this bowl, kind of spread it out. And then we set this aside while we make the rest of the filling. Now I love using cottage cheese in pie fillings because it gives it a nice protein boost and a really nice consistency, and then I don't have to use as much whipping cream. So we're going to add 1 cup of cottage cheese to a food processor, and you can use large curd, small curd, whatever your preference. And then we're going to add a 1/3 cup of maple syrup as our natural sweetener, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now we're going to blend it on high to smooth out all those little cottage cheese kernels so they will be undetectable. Next, we can add 2/3 of a cup of shredded coconut. Now I didn't add it while we were blending the cottage cheese because I didn't want it to break down all our little strands of coconut. Now I can add in our slightly chilled and thickened coconut milk. And then we'll blend this just until smooth. And that looks fantastic. And now's a really good time to test the sweetness level. And you can do that with just a little pinky test. That is really good. Now, if you'd like it to be a little bit sweeter, go ahead and add some more maple syrup, or you could add 1/4 cup of some powdered sugar. And now we can simply pour it into our pie crust, and we'll just spread that around with our spatula. Now this filling will fill in your pie crust about halfway, and that's because we want to leave a gap for piping in our whipped cream on top. Now this doesn't have to set completely before we add the whipped cream, but we want the top at least to be chilled. So I'm going to put this in the freezer for about 20 minutes, and then we can add the whipped cream on top. Now while the pie is chilling, I'll show you how easy it is to toast up a little bit of coconut that we can put on top of the whipped cream. So we'll start by bringing a small skillet to medium heat, and again, I love using my hex clad pans. And then we'll melt in about 1/2 teaspoon of some butter and add 1/4 cup of coconut and about 2 pinches of salt. And I'll just quickly give those a stir so they get a little bit of coating of the butter. It's already starting to smell delicious. And then we'll just keep an eye on it for about the next 30 seconds to a minute as those little shreds of coconut start to turn a really light golden brown. I can already see on the bottom they're starting to toast, so let's give those a stir. And this goes really fast, so you don't want to take your eyes off of it. As soon as you have some nice toasty color, go ahead and take that off the heat, and these are ready to go. And get it out of our pan and onto a little plate to cool. So I took the pie out of the freezer after about 20 minutes, and it's nice and cool on top, so we can add our whipped topping. Now of course you could spread this on, but I think it's really fun to pipe it on top to get those nice little peaks. So I've just added all the whipped cream to a piping bag, and I've just used a really big star tip. We'll do a little test peek right here on our plate. Oh, that's adorable. So I'm just going to start in the middle, make a nice big peak. And yes, this is very fun and satisfying. And now I can sprinkle some of our toasted coconut on top. So even though we can't see the coconut cream layer, this will make it very clear that this is a coconut cream pie. Now we'll just want to let this chill completely in the fridge, and then it is ready to serve and enjoy. And you can see how the filling just set up beautifully. It's nice and soft, but also sliceable. The best word I can come up with is that is absolutely divine. One bite gives you 4 textures that taste so incredible together. First, you get that firm but soft crust that tastes so good with the almond flour, and then you get that creamy coconut filling that you would never guess has cottage cheese, and then you get that light whipped cream on top, and I love that toasted coconut on top with a hint of butter and salt. That is seriously so delicious, and I love that it's made with clean, natural ingredients, which means I'm going to feel just as good even after I eat it. And even your gluten lovers are going to absolutely devour this pie. Well, thank you so much for hanging with me today in my kitchen. I have included the link to the full recipe, and it's in the video description below, and that will take you to my website, gentletummy.com. And I invite you to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I invite you to join me again in my kitchen.